The Flash is now out playing in theaters. Alright, so let's kick this off with talking about the man himself, or should I say the Batman himself, Michael Keaton. Because Michael Keaton's return as Batman was a huge point of the marketing campaign for this movie. It's a big selling point for a lot of people, and when it comes to Michael Keaton as Batman in this movie, the dude's great. What do you want to hear from me? Michael Keaton comes back into this role without skipping a beat. It is undeniably so cool to see his Batman kicking butt once again on screen with that Danny Elfman score blaring in the background. And of course, because so much time has passed since he last played Batman, they can do a lot more dynamic stuff with Michael Keaton in the Batman suit, with stunt doubles and CGI, of course. So getting to see this particular Batman move in the way that he does, fight in the way that he does, in the different angles that we're able to see, and use his gadgets and all of his technology in ways that we've never seen him do it before, it's just endless amounts of fun. I will say, though, that with how much Michael Keaton was put into this marketing campaign, I was expecting a little bit more of him. He comes into the movie actually pretty late into the second act. And yeah, he gets some really cool stuff to do, and Keaton is once again great in the role, but I can't help but feel like I wanted just a little bit more from him in the movie. Speaking of which, another big character promoted in this marketing campaign, and was kind of implied to be the completion of this trio of Flash and Batman, was Sasha Calle's Supergirl. And for what Sasha Calle is given in this movie to do as Supergirl, she was really cool to watch. But unfortunately, she also comes into the movie pretty late, near the tail end of the second act and into the third act. So while she had some pretty awesome action sequences, the character herself, I didn't really have time to get attached to. And having looked forward to seeing what she was going to do in the movie with all of the stuff that she had in the trailers and in the marketing, once again, felt a little bit like I was craving. I wanted a little bit more of her. But of course, Keaton and Calle, they are secondary characters first and foremost. The real main star of this movie is Ezra Miller as Barry Allen. And I'm not gonna lie, a big reason I was excited for this movie, a big reason why I was going into this theater was for Michael Keaton's Batman. But once I got into the movie, I stayed for Ezra Miller's Flash. And Ezra Miller's Flash from the theatrical cut of Justice League, as well as Zack Snyder's Justice League, I was never the biggest fan of his iteration of the Flash. Granted, I liked him a lot more in the Zack Snyder Justice League cut, which surprisingly, this movie actually feels a lot more like a continuation of the Zack Snyder's Justice League than I was expecting it to. Because when you get introduced to Ezra Miller's Flash in this movie, he's still working alongside Ben Affleck's Batman. They're still calling themselves the Justice League. They're talking about things that happened in Zack Snyder's Justice League cut. It definitely made this movie and Zack Snyder's Justice League in this world feel a lot more coherent in that way. And I also got really strong Spider-Man and Iron Man vibes from Homecoming with these two, but that's not to compare Marvel to DC. It was just something I noticed. But Ezra Miller, I gotta say, did a really great job with this movie. And this is Ezra Miller's movie through and through, because the movie is a personal story for Barry Allen as he tries to go back in time to prevent his mother's untimely death, and in doing so, he runs into a younger version of himself that he's paired up with for the rest of the movie. And when you get Ezra Miller playing off of Ezra Miller, I felt that that's really where the movie started to click. And Ezra really sells both of these performances when these guys are together and they're bouncing off of each other. With Ezra bouncing off of Ezra, it is so funny. It is so fun. And their relationship is where a lot of the heart of the movie is found. And of course, there's a lot of themes and ideas within their relationship of accepting your past self and all that kind of stuff. That's also really fun and cool to explore within the movie. And this movie is really bizarre. Some of the imagery, some of the things that you see in this movie, you just sit there and you go, what is even happening? There are babies falling out of the sky at one point in this movie, and it is just a riot. I thought it was so much fun. And that is one of the things that is so great about this movie, is it doesn't really feel that heavy. The tone is so light. Everything is just so humorous. It is such a breezy and easy watch. I was smiling the entire time. Now, that isn't to say that the movie is perfect, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't think this is a great movie. Because while I do think that this movie is a lot of fun to watch, there's definitely some aspects of it that make it a little bit uneven. This movie goes, much like The Flash, at lightning speed. From the minute it starts to the minute it ends, it just goes. And sometimes it feels a little bit sporadic, sometimes it feels a little bit chaotic. And you're either going to be along for that ride or you're not. There's also a choice with the visual effects, and I'm calling it a choice because the director has come out and said that it was a choice, to make some of the visual effects a little bit wonky, a little bit uncanny valley looking in this movie. And if that's what the director wanted to do, if that's what Andy Muschietti wanted this movie to look like, that's his choice. That doesn't mean it looks good. There's a lot in this movie within the Speed Force sequences, within the sequences of Barry running really, really fast, that don't look 2023 great. And having just come back from the theater, I can already tell you that these effects are dated. I also think there's a couple problems within the third act, because I feel like the third act kind of begins to feel a little bit unfocused for the movie and how the movie had been going at that point, because there is an event involving Zod from Man of Steel, as we see in the trailers, that we're kind of leading up to within this third act, and by the time we get there, it just felt very anticlimactic to me. And the whole movie kind of feels a little bit anticlimactic once you get to the end, because this does involve time travel and multiverses. It does kind of get a little bit more convoluted than I think it needs to for its own good. And within these timelines and multiverse concepts, you can find a lot of plot holes. This plot that is going on throughout the entire movie really could have been cleared up in like 2 seconds if Barry had just thought it through a little bit more. And one thing that I think a lot of people are excited about going into this movie, and this is not necessarily the movie's fault, because James Gunn came out during his big DCU announcement and he talked about how The Flash is going to kind of reset the DCEU. We were hoping that we would get a little bit more answers to our questions about how the DCU that James Gunn is going into is going to look. And once again, we are left with more questions than answers. Because I know that this movie was shot before James Gunn even had the concept that he might become the head of DC Studios, before there even was a DC Studios. But I honestly could not tell you if the last shot of this movie is supposed to be taken seriously or as a joke. Because if it's taken as a joke, I laughed so hard at the last scene of this movie. But if it's taken seriously, I don't understand it. I don't get where they're going. And because there's this sense of we're never going to get the answers as to why this movie leaves off the way that it does, there's a little bit of frustration and a little bit irritation that I had walking out of the theater thinking, well, I'm never going to know why that ended the way it ended. And it makes me a little bit upset. But in the end, we've been hearing for months that The Flash is the greatest comic book movie that James Gunn has ever seen, that David Zaslav at Warner Brothers has ever seen. Tom Cruise watched this movie and called Andy Muschietti on the phone because he just had to express how much he loved it. And you know, props to those guys. I don't fully get that. I think this movie is very fun. I think it's a blast. I think it's very enjoyable. I would say it's good, but I wouldn't go as far as to say it's great. And I definitely wouldn't go as far to say that it's the greatest comic book movie ever made. But it is definitely high up on my list of my favorite DCEU movies. It definitely gave me what I was looking for. Maybe not to the extent that I wanted, but I definitely walked out satisfied. But I think that this is a totally recommendable movie. I had a blast watching it, and I definitely have plans to watch it again. Anyway, guys, those are all my thoughts and opinions on The Flash. But what did you guys think of The Flash? Did you like it more than me? Did you like it about as much as me? Are you not going to see it at all because of Ezra Miller? I want to hear all your thoughts about that, guys. And if you're new here, we have a goal on this channel. We want to hit 2,500 subscribers before the end of the year. So if you like talking movies and having all these kind of discussions, we do that on this channel all the time. We'd love to have you join our little community. Consider hitting that subscribe button on your way out. Once again, guys, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.